Campfire season's back, and that means s'mores. But when you're at home treating yourself, take them over ice with Dunkin's S'mores Cold Brew Concentrate. And suddenly you're always treating yourself. The home with Dunkin' is where you want to be. Click or tap the banner to shop now.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Good afternoon. This is Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is my good friend, esteemed colleague, Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the chair of the Suffolk County Party, as well as the vice chair of the state party. Jesse, wonderful to have you back with us. We missed you.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
And we have a wonderful two guests today. We're starting off with Colonel Tony Shaffer, who we had on a couple of weeks ago. And Tony is absolutely a fantastic expert on foreign policy and national security, and professional intelligence officer, of senior aide both to the White House and the Pentagon. A man who's written extensively, commented extensively, is a commentator on radio and television. He's really the go-to guy on the big issues affecting world peace and the security and insecurity of the United States. So, Colonel Shaffer, something happened in Russia last week, and people are still scratching their heads. Who won, who lost, what it was all about, and what the ramifications are. So I'm talking about I guess the Germans call it a putsch, P-U-T-S-C-H.
Yeah.
And was it a game? How serious was it? Tell us about it, please.
So, Judge, thank you for having me again. And, we're still sorting through it. And it's very interesting at this point that even here we are halfway through this week, people are still trying to figure it all out. Let's start with the foundation and go back. One of the things they're doing right now, their foreign minister, Lavrov, is, quote unquote, doing an investigation to find out if there's any NATO or U.S. involvement in this attempted putsch or coup or insurrection, depending on which word you want to pick based on one sentiment. And it was interesting the other day when they announced this investigation. One of the first people to say there was no involvement was a guy named Joe Biden. He was on the air saying, "Oh, what nuts!" And it's the old Shakespeare thing: "Thou dost protest too much." My theory on this, and we'll see if I'm correct or not. I think the guy who ran the attempted coup, who ran Wagner, this guy named Prigozhin, actually reached out to the West. And remember, Judge, there was indications that the Gang of Eight, the senior intelligence oversight members of both houses of Congress, were briefed last week on this. So something happened. So I have a sense that we, the United States, had a sense this was coming. The question becomes, what, if anything, did the Biden folks consider? And you and I have talked about this before, Judge. Theoretically, the Biden administration is supposed to be supporting Ukraine in the war. Katie barred the door. If they didn't tell the Ukrainians this was coming and say, get on your horses, get on your offensive, and do the offensive over the weekend during this chaos, then they made a huge mistake, because that would have been the best time, Judge, for the Ukrainians to roll out there while Putin was in chaos. That would have been the best time. But apparently they missed the window. And so this is something we need to look at. But do I believe there was actually a coup? Absolutely. I think that Prigozhin somehow believed that he could do it. Now, the reason it fails is because he didn't have the three elements necessary to be successful. First, he would have had to grease the skids of all the other oligarchs. You don't do that, you're not going to get anywhere. And he clearly didn't do that. And my friend Brigadier General Blaine Holt, retired, and I both said on air over the weekend, he doesn't have the throw weight to complete this. The second thing he needed was the military, the Russian military, which he didn't have. He alienated the military during the time of his assault in Bakhmut using Wagner, because he was constantly yelling about the military not supporting him. There's no general going to come over and help him. And most importantly, the people of Russia. He made no direct plea to them. As much as Wagner is very popular, they are seen as a hero organization to the Russian people because of what they've done. No amount of popularity of Wagner was going to translate to Prigozhin. So in the end, Judge, I think this was something that did potentially weaken Putin. We're going to see how the Chinese, Indians, and other non-aligned nations jump into this and see it. But in the end, I think in many ways, Prigozhin, the guy who ran this, is a dead man walking. I think a polonium-210 cocktail is in his future, no matter what happens in Belarus, where he's been sent on his exit from being the director of Wagner.
Jesse.
Colonel, thank you for being with us.
Yes, sir.
And I understand where we are with this and we're still trying to figure out. I'm not surprised, though, as you described, that the Biden administration, if they were involved, missed the window. That's been the testament of their administration over the course of the last 2.5 years. But despite the fact that whether it be contrived or maybe the West being involved, whatever the source of it, has this action, it's a two-part question. Number one, has this action, as you said, may have weakened Putin in some cases, but is that going to stir the people of Russia to maybe take a second look at what they've been living through and what their leadership and Putin has been taking them through over the last several years, especially in this where the exposure of the Russian military has been conducted here with the Ukrainian war. That's number one. Number two, the role that Belarus played in bringing in this peace negotiation or this ceasefire or whatever you want to call it between the Wagner Group and Putin. Does that elevate them in the region, on the world stage? Where does that put them?
So let's start with the second part first. So, yeah, I think Belarus is seeking to essentially reconfirm it's part of Putin's empire. I mean, Lukashenko, the president, made this deal. Remember, I always try to tell people this is not don't try to put our framework on what's going on over there. Our framework of political, military, and diplomatic process doesn't apply to them. Imagine, if you will, Tony Soprano, an episode of The Sopranos meets The Hunt for Red October. That's what we're seeing. These people are thugs. So just kind of imagine that. And so, yes, you have all these thugs. Lukashenko's known Putin and Prigozhin forever. I mean, these guys literally are like mafiosos. So just look at it that way. Like, these guys are all mafiosos. And, when they decide to rub one or other out, they put them in a boat, take them out in the river sometimes. It really is sometimes that dramatic. So the first part of your question then regarding the people. The people are still completely behind Putin. They've seen Putin turn the economy around despite the sanctions, and they're with him. And by the way, Wagner is seen as a very popular organization. And it's not just about Wagner being a paramilitary force that does dirty deeds. I mean, that's why they were created. Wagner is actually created from the DNA of the GRU, the Russian Military Intelligence Service. They actually have officers running it. And Prigozhin was more of, you look at a baseball team, he was more of the manager, not the coach. The coaches are the general officers who left the GRU and are out doing things. And Wagner, are a global tool of Russian foreign policy. They do the dirty deeds in Syria. We've actually dropped bombs on them. My friend Joe Dunford, when he was chairman, he had to drop bombs on Wagner in Syria because they were trying to go after some of our Kurds that we were supporting. And then at the same time, they do the things in Africa. And most importantly, I think for the purposes of your question, they're the ones that provide all the personal security for Russia, for the Chinese endeavors all over the planet. Russians provide for the Chinese, because the Chinese don't have an inherent system of protection. They actually do it for them. So these things all come together to show that for better or for worse, everything is going to continue on in Russia without much interference from the outside.
Well, that's very interesting. Two things come to mind, Tony. The first thing is the Wagner role diminished? Is it be absorbed into the Russian military apparatus? And is that a good thing or a bad thing for Russian interests? Or certainly I'm more concerned about our interests. And the other thing that really concerns me about it, again, like Jesse, a two-parter, I never believed that there was going to be a breakup of the Putin control. It just didn't seem to me the old pieces were there, and you were absolutely right the way you articulated it. But I'm always fearful of breakup states. I'm always fearful of fallen regimes, and in a system with God knows how many thousands of nuclear weapons, who's going to control what? And those are my two concerns. So would you address yourself to those two issues?
Absolutely. Yes, sir, Judge. Look, I share that. When I saw Jennifer Rubins and Malcolm Nance and all those on the left cheering about the upcoming removal of Putin with the replacement of Prigozhin, it's like Prigozhin is like worse than Putin. One of Prigozhin's issues was they went too slow and didn't kill enough people in Ukraine. So the idea that him replacing Putin as a step up, that's not good. And the other thing to remind people, we've seen what happens when you have the failure of governance. The failure of governance in Syria resulted in ungoverned space, which created ISIS. The removal of Gaddafi and Libya without a plan and understanding of how to maintain their government resulted in the chaos we still see in Libya. So just think, Judge, for the second, we go about encouraging and doing this, and we have a failed state in the form of something as large as Russia with literally the largest nuclear weapon stockpile on the planet. Katie barred the door, because if you think it's bad now with mafia having all sorts of access and all these oligarchs, my friend, and you probably know him, Ambassador Hank Cooper, Hank ran SDI under President Bush 41. Hank and I did something about 12 years ago regarding loose nuclear weapons and what would happen in a failed state where the Russian nuclear weapons became available in the black market. Back then, Judge, the price was about $600 million per warhead. I'm sure it's gone up. But you have 2 or 3 of these things go through the Black Sea. We actually charted it out. We figured out how the black market would move them as a format. That's one thing we dare not want, or that we allow to happen. So as much as Putin's bad and evil, I get it. He's a thug. We have to understand the consequences of his removal regarding the very issues you're talking about. So I always get worried when I see the left cheering on the destruction of Putin and Russia, when it's like, I don't think you understand that the next guy behind him is probably going to be potentially even worse. Yeah,
but go back to the other point I'm concerned about. If Wagner now is staged out of Belarus, is that a good thing, a bad thing? Has anything changed? Has everything changed? What does that really mean? Because as you correctly point out, Wagner is the enforcer for the Russians and the guarantor for the Chinese. Right. And what does this mean? Is Putin really going to try to diminish them, or is he just going to have the other guy fall out of a window or drink the wrong cocktail?
That's what he's going to do, the latter. And then, because that's why I think Putin moved so swiftly to try to cut this deal, Judge, is to literally get Wagner back under state control and out from under the control of Prigozhin. Again, they Wagner, for better or for worse, were created to work outside of the Russian legal system. They literally do things which would be illegal for the Russian military to do. That's why they did the assault on Bakhmut. That's why they do things in places like Syria and Africa. So they are literally an off-the-books operation that is a critical tool to Putin. And I don't think they're going to change much other than who they answer to. And by the way, Judge, I don't think they're going to be long reporting to the military, because again, if they try to follow their own law, they can't do some of the off-the-books things. The military cannot do off-the-books things that Wagner does. So I think Putin saw that the danger here, wanted to get rid of an annoyance in the form of Prigozhin, and still retain Wagner as a tool of foreign policy that he's going to rely upon for the rest of the time he's in office.
Jesse.
Colonel, just staying in Belarus and Wagner for a moment, we said that it's going to, number one, following their own laws. I don't think that, we can expect Russia to follow their own laws or anybody to follow their own laws. But I did see the president of Belarus say that the 25,000 troops from Wagner that were marching towards Moscow would be able to stay within Belarus for a period of time. Now, he also commented on the benefit of having this elite army force in Belarus. Now, I know that there's some, as you point out, there's some concerns whether or not that they're going to be able to be folded in, or the military the Russian official military working with them. But what does this mean? Belarus even being a player in that region even further, maybe not diplomatically or from a perception of prominence or having their stature raised, but having those 25,000 elite army troops sitting there. And will be Belarus now that dispatches them, that deploys them? Will they be working with the head of Wagner and such to do that, or what is that? Where do you see that going?
That's a great question. So I see it going in that part of why they're doing that is to basically figure out who within that number, the 25K, were actually kind of lied to, because there are some reports that some of these guys didn't know they were going to Moscow to overthrow Putin. They were told something different. So obviously they want to figure out, because they are a resource, they're a valuable resource. You don't want to be, literally telling people who don't deserve it. And I'm a little bit light about it, but that's what they don't want. So this gives them some time and space to sort through that. Putting them in Belarus with Prigozhin, they have some time to sort. I understand that most officers who came out of the GRU who joined Wagner did not join this effort to go to Moscow. So there's a distinction with a difference on who within Wagner was supporting Prigozhin, and they want to figure that out. And then those who were lied to. But no, ultimately, the control goes back to Moscow. It goes back to Putin. And yeah, I understand what you're saying. They don't follow their own laws, but they want the people of Russia to believe they are. Remember, so much of what we're talking about is perception. So in the mind of the Russian people, because this is where we started, this is one of the questions we talked about, is are the people behind Putin? Well, yeah, they are, but they're lied to half the time. It's like the number of casualties. Prigozhin chose to speak the truth about that. The casualties are way higher than what they've reported. We all know that. But it's all about the fact that the people of Russia believe what they're told, and that's what Putin's trying to preserve. We don't matter to them. It's more about what his people believe and what he can get them to believe. And so that's where Wagner's going to go back under Putin's authority after they do the sorting process. And I think the Russian people will continue to accept, as long as the lies are believable, they're going to accept the lie.
Well, for the purposes of this discussion, and I apologize, Judge, let's say that the United States was involved, the West was involved, and in this case, the West and the United States did not give Ukraine a heads up. This is when you should move on militarily while Wagner's doing this over the weekend. How would you rate, if it was an effort from the West or the United States, how would you rate that effort, and what would be the resulting grade you would give it?
So maybe 1 out of 10. And look, I was talking to Ed Meese this week. As you know, Ed was the Attorney General for President Reagan, and Ed and I are friends, and he's one of my friends and mentors. So Ed and I were just kind of going through how the Reagan administration would have done it. As you all know, I think, and remember, Ed was very close to President Reagan, so he was just kind of gaming it out with me. It's like, though, these are the things we would have done. And I can tell you, they played the Russians, the Soviets back then, like it was a chess match. They actually played hard, and they won. So Ed's point, and it would take too long to go through some of the things we talked about, but suffice it to say that Ed basically pointed out, and I agree with him, the Biden administration has no ability to speak the language of the Cold War. The Russians are speaking the language of the Cold War. These things that are happened during the Cold War. And so the fact that you have an administration which is so tone deaf and lacking internal intelligence to understand context or act on it is a real disservice to the national security of our nation. I simply put, I don't think Tony Blinken, I don't think Lloyd Austin have the smarts necessary to outthink Putin, even when opportunities like this are given to them.
Well, Colonel Shaffer, I want to thank you very much. Jesse, Garcia, and I are very, very honored to have you on the show. To our audience, we've been talking with Colonel Tony Shaffer, a renowned expert on U.S. foreign policy, military intelligence, and strategy, a great commentator on radio and television, a great writer. Tony, that was absolutely wonderful. Thank you for being with us, and we look forward to having you again on Let the Record Show with Chairman Garcia and myself. Thank you.
Judge, thank you. It's always an honor to join you. Thank you.
Your snacking routine can get a little dull. Time for an Oikos remix. Like a crunchy storm of sea salt praline pretzels, dark chocolate, and butter toffee, showering down into a smooth, creamy yogurt. Enjoy 3 Oikos Remix varieties with epic mix-ins and 11 grams of complete protein per 4.5-ounce serving. See RemixYogurt.com.
We're shipping Mother's Day gifts with a rapid-fire round of questions. Ready?
Yes, my gift. Can you pack it?
Yep.
Ship it?
Yes.
Guarantee it?
Of course.
Oh, send gift baskets?
For sure.
Protect electronics? Dog-proof it? Return it if they hate it?
Yes, no, and yeah.
Are you the UPS store?
Hey, we have a winner!
Visit the upsstore.com/guarantee for full details. Most locations are independently owned. Products, services, prices, and hours of operation may vary. See Center for details. The UPS Store. Visit a store today.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Okay, this is Let the Record Show, and we're back. Jesse and I just had a very interesting conversation with Colonel Tony Shaffer, the president of the London Institute, a great think tank, a great military, diplomatic strategist, is an expert on national security and world peace and what you need to do to have world peace. And now we're shifting gears, Jesse. I want to talk to you about what's been breaking. And during the break, I told you we're going to be very fortunate on WABC tonight. We're going to have Chairman James Comer of the Oversight Committee, the United States House of Representatives, has been leading the charge, along with a couple of other major Republican chairs, to go after the allegations of influence peddling by the Biden family, as well as the conduct or misconduct or failure to act of part of the major players, whether you're talking about the FBI, the IRS, or the Department of Justice and the whole whistleblower situation. So we'll be talking to him tonight on Katz and Cosby between 5 and 6. So the interesting thing to me, and Congressman Comer, Chairman Comer said this the other day, and made me rethink my position, Jesse. Mm-hmm. I've been saying all along that to get an honest take on this, we need to have a special counsel to investigate the Justice Department, the FBI, and IRS about what they did. What do they know? What did they do? Did they look the other way? Did they cover up? Did they slow walk? Did they do all of that? Okay. The second part of that was I was thinking we need a special counsel to investigate the Bidens themselves. Congressman Comer, Chairman Comer has pointed out, and I think he's right and I was mistaken, that you really don't want to have a special counsel to investigate the Bidens themselves. You want to do the process stuff about what was done and what wasn't done, because then you will get to unravel indirectly what the Bidens allegedly did. All right. And I think he's right, because a special counsel could say, well, there's investigations, therefore I'm not going to cooperate with the investigative committees of the House. And if you appoint the wrong guy, and there's no confidence I have in Judge Garland, the U.S. Attorney General, that he'll appoint somebody who will really go after the Biden influence peddling allegations. So what do you think on those issues, Jesse?
I see the point. And as Congressman Comer points out, that may be the right path of going this, because you've seen the Department of Justice act as basically interfering, not cooperating with the House Oversight Committee. They've blatantly said they're not going to turn out, even dating back to January of this year, 6 months ago, that they're not going to turn over certain items of investigations. We see that there is pushback from the Department of Justice, pushback on the leadership side. And when I speak about this, I'm not speaking about the rank and file members of the Justice Department. I'm talking more about the leadership of the Justice Department, and the same for the FBI. I think what we're seeing here is that they're not cooperating. They're playing interference. They are slow walking, and they are doing things to basically cut off ties and avenues for the House Oversight Committee to do its constitutional right to examine these issues. You know why? Typically I'm in favor of a special counsel. I think it adds a level of independence. This Attorney General Garland has not demonstrated himself as being someone that has been independent. He's more of a blocking fullback for the president. than anything else. So perhaps maybe Comer's approach is good. I mean, that's what happened in the mid-'70s. It was the House of Representatives, its committees that investigated. They got to the end of what was going on with Watergate, and then it was turned over and it was moved on by the Department of Justice. And then, of course, we had a series of legislation that followed after that. So perhaps maybe we have to go back to this. Let's let the citizens, let's let the elected representatives conduct their investigation, seek out all the information, conduct their interviews in the light of day so that American people can see what's going on, and so that it comes out not filtered through any news agencies or any big tech filtering, directly to the people of this country so that they can see what's going on in their government. Because one thing that's indisputable, Your Honor, and I know I'm going on a little bit about this because I'm passionate about it, the Biden administration has demonstrated clearly by their actions that there is a two-tier level of justice here, two standards, one for them and one for everybody else. And if you're an opponent of this administration, you have a different level of justice applied to you. They are weaponizing our Department of Justice and our FBI, basically the prosecution side of this government, this institution. That's what it's doing. They're weaponizing those institutions, and that's wrong.
Well, to me, I agree with that. But also, let me give you some key facts. Weiss, who's the U.S. Attorney in Delaware, was never appointed as a special counsel. He was looking at the tax issues. Took 5 years for them to come out with these lightweight charges, the sweetheart deal on the tax charges. They slow-walked it so that a lot of the stuff was blocked by the statute of limitations in terms of a prosecution. So that's important to know. Additionally, it's reported, and there are witnesses to this, that he did two things. He went to the U.S. attorneys in District of Columbia. He went to the U.S. attorney in California, and he said, there are other things I want to look at, and that is the reference to the allegations of influence peddling and the money grabs by the Biden players. And they denied him that opportunity. Okay? He also asked the Department of Justice to appoint him as a special counsel so that his mandate was broader. Why is that important? Because a local U.S. attorney, Jesse, can only investigate crimes that took place in his or her jurisdiction. In this case, it was Delaware. To go outside of Delaware, to go to California, to go to District of Columbia where there are allegations against young Mr. Hunter Biden, he has to have the authorization either of those particular U.S. attorneys to help in the investigation or allow him to investigate, or be appointed as a special counsel. And Garland testified before Congress, and Garland said, there's full cooperation going on, which leads me to the following conclusion. Either he was not speaking the truth to the Congress when Senator Grassley asked him those questions about is he authorized to go forward and take it wherever it leads, or he was being blindsided by somebody at the Justice Department who, in his name, cut him off from the chain of authority. In either event, does not speak well of the Attorney General of the United States when he testifies before the United States Senate saying that Weiss could do whatever he wanted to do wherever he wanted to do. It's very, very troubling. And it is reported, and I have no idea if this is correct or not, Jesse, but an assistant U.S. attorney in that office, a woman named Wolf, apparently was controlling this whole enterprise and not Weiss. He was more of a figurehead than a player. And you have about a half a dozen different people who are verifying the allegations of the whistleblower that this in fact happened, that there was no ability at all to go forward on these investigations. So fundamentally, you have a sweetheart deal that didn't touch on the real reality. And I'll raise another issue with you, Jesse, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Now, the media is taking the play, well, isn't Joe Biden a wonderful guy? He's a wonderful father. He's protecting his son. His son was drug addicted. He really wasn't responsible. And that's the real story. Most respectfully, Jesse, that is not the real story. That's the shiny object they're trying to deflect on. The real story is, what did the Bidens do, if anything? How did it impact on their conduct? Did it hurt the American policy and interest? What do you say?
I think I can't disagree with you. I believe that it's atrocious of the deal. And you mentioned the deal, and I honestly, with everything going on in the last 2 weeks, I forgot about that sweetheart deal. I continue I'm bewildered that you compare the actions of the Biden administration and the way he has protected his family and used officials' resources to protect his family, allegedly. And then you have the same, and you look at how the Democrats and the mainstream media treated the Trump family. The two differences are amazing. Could you imagine if there was even a whiff of a plea deal with one of the Trump children? They went after Kushner, time after time about his role in the administration and what he really did, to the point where, he was doing things quietly and leading to some great successes during his tenure there and dealing with the issues in the Middle East. So you're right. There's a two-prong approach, and manipulating the judicial system. The justice system for the benefit of your son is just wrong. I mean, every parent will do everything they want for their children, but this is the president of the United States who represents all the people of this country, and it's important that there's trust in the system. I don't think that some guy, some family from Patchogue or Bayville or even Brooklyn is going to get the same type of treatment that the Biden administration and the Biden Department of Justice has given Hunter Biden in this case. Well,
and let me finish this segment by saying this to you. There was a recent editorial in the Wall Street Journal which pointed out that not only, this is not just a failure to pay taxes on money you earned, okay? There were a lot of misrepresentations on the tax forms about what the deductions were for. So, for example, if he was paying for drugs or for hookers and he said it was for something else, that's a false statement to the IRS. And it's a false filing.
It is.
So that wasn't touched at all. So even within his limited mandate, Weiss's U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware could have charged him with that. And those are serious felonies. And that's very serious stuff, Jesse.
And what we've had here, too, this is not just Republicans or maybe some right-wing media who are saying this. A lot of this information and the slow walking of this stuff has come out as a result of whistleblowers in this case that are come out to Comer's committee and being very clear of how they've seen the Justice Department slow walk things and manipulate the procedures and protocols to the benefit of the Biden administration, the Biden family.
It's very, very troubling indeed. We're going to have to take the break. We'll be back in a moment. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Stay tuned, please.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
This is Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is my good friend, esteemed colleague, Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. We're honored and privileged to have an eminent doctor, psychiatrist, a well-known thinker on important cutting-edge issues on drug addiction in this country, Dr. Eric Braverman. Dr. Braverman is a graduate of NYU Medical School. He's a professor in medical schools across the country. He's a commentator on radio, television. He's written dozens, indeed, probably hundreds of articles on psychiatry and drug issues. Dr. Braverman, welcome to Let the Record Show.
Thank you. And let's correct one little thing on the record. I'm not board certified in psychiatry, and there's a good reason. Most of psychiatry relates to your total health and to your brain. So I looked, when I had a chance to be board certified in family practice, I focused in on neuropsychiatric medical research. Most people, we always say their brain is connected to their body and their body's connected to their brain. And we hope the two will sort of neck with each other, meaning kiss each other with better brain health, better body health, better body health, better brain health. And that's been my motto for over 40 years.
Okay. So let's talk about the large issue. Jesse and I have been talking about this, and we're very concerned about the drug addiction crisis in America. Where do you think we are? Where do you think we're going?
Well, we're in 1858 when when John Brown showed up at Harper's Ferry and kidnapped Washington's relatives who were keeping slaves and arming for a Southern rebellion. And we're at the tipping point of a catastrophe because you're losing 100,000 kids, which is, besides the agony for the parents, is measured at millions of dollars per child, how it impacts the economy, how it impacts the emotions of families and schools. You are in disaster mode, literally, right now. It's a fentanyl crisis, and kids are overdosing because it kills you instantly. I mean, and you may not even know you're getting it. It's laced into ordinary things, and it's the tipping point of death.
Jesse.
We were going to talk about the fentanyl. We can talk about a little bit about that now. But, Doctor, what about the fact that now we've basically allowed for the recreational use of drugs, and now we're getting these kids are getting, these drugs in gummies and in different types of delivery devices that are, appealing to them. They're like candy.
Listen, these are
working?
My papers, which I sent to Judge Weiner, I should send to you, is 200 research papers all the time. Marijuana is a gateway drug. Alcohol is a gateway drug. Ketamine is a gateway drug. Quaaludes are a gateway drug. Sedatives, the benzos that they get from their parents, whether it's Xanax, Klonopin, whether they get nicotine early on, even eating incorrectly will be a gateway to more addiction. And anabolic steroids, they can be gateway. Psychedelics, which so many psychiatrists want this approved. I mean, this is the stuff that drove everyone crazy in the 60s and gives you lifelong potential psychosis. In fact, you can't even give a psychiatric diagnosis if someone uses psychedelics for 5 years because the brain is so injured, you don't know whether it's the brain injury or it's emotion. So you are so right. We are given the wrong message. When a country loses its values, it loses the value of its health care. And as one admiral says, you lose the value of your currency. So we're going to get into an economic crisis that's going to follow this loss of values in healthcare.
So is it fair to say then that one of the proximate causes of the situation is the loss of values and the failure of policymakers to understand these root causes and to address them?
You hit on it very much so, but there's always proximal cause, long-term causes. When you plant a seed, the tree grows up, and then eventually it could go into your neighbor's yard with the branches, and then you trim the branches. But maybe you planted the root in the wrong place. So our roots are been planted in a high from drugs and things. They're always some form of the savior of the kids, instead of what I'm addicted to or what other people could be addicted to, reading. Others are addicted to the American founding. They were addicted to reading the Bible everywhere, and they were sanctified by it and benefited by the value of its wisdom. We have the society that's lost its core values, and now, worse, when I meet the kids, they're all they do is communicate by 30-second bits and bytes. That you can't read a sentence by reading the first half of it. So they have first half communication, let alone absence of paragraph, book reading. Most people don't know who Frederick Douglass really was. They don't know his speeches. They don't know Martin Luther King and his letters from Birmingham. They don't understand the greatness of Eisenhower's great speeches and lessons, and Teddy Roosevelt about getting engaged in society, let alone in Lincoln's inaugural or the 272 words of the Gettysburg Address, which is so majestic that everyone quotes in our generation. So we have to go back and add a brain health checkup to every pediatrician, not just a vaccine checkup. We have to know their memory and their psychiatric status, and we have to help kids get better attention, not just take Adderall and Ritalin, which are good at times, but not just an amphetamine, because amphetamines are sometimes a gateway drug for the kids. So our treatments are worsening the kids.
Understood. Jesse?
One of the things that we've been dealing with since the legalization of marijuana is just take Manhattan or any street really now in New York. The people who are not interested in this, like myself, getting hit with these wafts of secondhand weed smoke. I mean, it comes to a point where I'm concerned if me or my son, who's about to get into a car, is going to get into a contact high on these issues. Where do you see the health effects about that type of secondary exposure to marijuana?
The secondary smoke has always been proven to be both a contributor to cancer and a contributor to our own poor health. They're not that overwhelming, but it's still proven that if a person's around lives with a smoker, they get lung cancer. It's more significant rather than walking by it. But walking by it is still very unpleasant for those Americans who find the sobriety in the old-fashioned work, pray, love, play. And that is the old-fashioned cornerstone. And smelling dope all day long when you're moving around the city is a very dopey thing. In fact, we used to call it dope because the early studies on marijuana were proven to show lower IQ. And I don't know if you saw what happened last week. I have a book, by the way, on pediatric raising miracle children, but we had the lowest score since 1990 on math scores. Lowest scores that we've ever had. And math is actually the secret to a civilization. I mean, history of civilization, we're not going into all the details, but wherever cultures didn't understand how to do numbers 1 and 0, our whole computer infrastructure is based on what God is one. We're almost like nothing, and presto, you got a whole computer language. The history of math, whether you're doing in the Roman Empire, they did letters were numbers, and that confused everybody, and that was not good. And the Greeks didn't believe in imaginary numbers, and they didn't believe in irrational numbers. So how a civilization sees math is very significant, and we're sinking due to marijuana, and worse than sinking, the kids are dying because once they think they're safe with marijuana and it's legal, they take the message and they go get fentanyl. So the math IQ of the United States, if it gets diminished, is actually the whole scientific output of a country.
So what are the best solutions, Doctor, to this crisis that we're going through?
Look, I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember the movie On the Waterfront when a pile of bricks gets dropped and the guy said, get a doctor.
On the waterfront?
Get a doctor. Yeah, get a
I
doctor.
plead guilty. I plead guilty.
All right, well, get a doctor. He needs a priest. And the bottom line is, in this case, we don't need a legislator. We need a doctor. So we have to convince the 24 boards to get a brain health checkup on every kid. And the education department is not fluid with the pediatrics department. So they have to really care enough about the children to sit down and say, let's bring the heads of neurology from the major schools and psychiatry, the major schools. I used to work with Bob Kenkro, NYU. I was in their department. I was in Phil Steeg's department at Weill Cornell, and we have to agree on a brain health test. If we can't agree, then we need a drug czar to make the test. And most likely, you won't agree. Six major
support,
doctors, 7 opinions.
Is there support for your theory about the brain health?
Oh, massive. In fact, I've worked with Nora Volkow, the head of NIDA, for 25 years. I worked previously with the head of the National Institute of Alcoholism, Ernie Noble, and they all felt that the brain tests complement that, but those are a little more expensive. The reality is you can get a psychiatric survey on a child, a pain survey, memory and attention survey, and a simple character or Myers-Briggs. It's unbelievable to me, 250 years after Ben Franklin invented his character test in his autobiography, that no school that I know of does a character test. No medical doctor does a character test. We have a restructuring of our approach to children. You deliver most babies head first, and the only way to deliver health care is head first. And when we rejected the Declaration of Independence that says that we're created in his image and that therefore we draw our rights from that concept, that we're going to live a life of sacred honor, and that we believe in nature's God, which means that science somehow is under God. Once you lost those values, you ended up with a healthcare system that delivers healthcare with vaccination first, checkups for diabetes, all of which are important. But what we all need right now in a crisis of 100,000 dead children is every single American child from 13 on getting a brain health checkup, and they're cheap. They can be put on an app. Instead of our kids, parents can actually block the social media, and they can say you're doing your checkup on your brain health. And then once you get the brain health, first, and everyone sees fun in it. And there's things you can measure. Like we used to measure with the heart disease epidemic in the 60s and 70s. We measured cholesterol, HDL and LDL. Now you can measure your brain age and your brain processing speed. Virtually every drug your kids are using, every bit of junk food, their lack of exercise, their lack of reading, all slows their processing speed to think in their mind.
Just amazing. Very insightful. Jesse, last point.
I was going to ask you about what we could tell parents and young people on how to do this. And you just mentioned the app, closing out some social media time from their kids to have them do this. But as we go forward, what about someone? I mean, how do we deal with this? It's so prevalent in our society now. It seems like it goes unchecked. What kind of other tools can we help give parents that are maybe listening right now and, their children are going to schools, elementary school, whatnot, or like my son who's going to college and he's going to see a whole different type of world. What kind of tools can us as parents give them that we haven't touched upon yet as they venture into schools, whether it be elementary, high school, and college in this new environment?
Well, they have their tests according to conventional educational tests. Then they need to go to viacharacter.org, which is a character test I learned about from West Point, and I learned from Dr. Seligman at, I think, University of Pennsylvania. So it's called viacharacter.org. They need to get each child looking at their content of their character. They all got Martin Luther King Day off. Where's the content of their character tested, measured, and refined? Look, all of us on the radio right now, the three of us, are always knowing that we find our faults and then we work to develop the opposite trait and to get better balance. Then you can go to attention.com. It's called Pay Attention or 1-800, and they can do a test. But they need a measurement because the kids get the Adderall, and guess what they do? They abuse it. Then when they can't get the Adderall anymore from a shrink, they go and they buy fentanyl. They buy what they think is a pain reliever, OxyContin online, and what they get, because you get a high initially from any pain reliever is a anxiolytic, meaning when you take a narcotic or a benzodiazepine like Xanax, you first get a relief from your stress. But instant relief, I get instant relief if I eat chocolate, but if you eat chocolate all day long, there goes your weight, your blood sugar, your pressure, and everything else. There goes your health. So delayed gratification is the most important message not being taught. Secondly, we have to get a measure of attention, memory, emotional, creative, and abstract IQ, these core measures, like 7 or 8 measures of the brain, and then for the rest of our life, a society that's looking to reach the state of sacred honor, which is our declaration, and a country that cares about its posterity, which is what we say in the preamble of the Constitution. And that's it. I'm certain I could do it, but I have to have, you have to have a bully pulpit to do it.
Well, Teddy
Roosevelt taught us a bully pulpit.
Well, we're very happy we shared our little bully pulpit with you today. This has been Dr. Eric Braverman, distinguished doctor, a great thinker on the issue of
and I have
brain
a book
health.
For anyone who wants to look at Miracle.
Tell us the name, please.
It's Trinity Broadcasting. They publish it. It's Raising Miracle Children, and it gives you all that information and more. And it's going to transform the way we raise our children. The United States has an obligation to raise its children for the future of the world.
You're absolutely right. Doctor, on behalf of Chairman Garcia and myself, I want to thank you very much for joining us today on Let the Record Show. This has been a very instructive conversation. We look forward to having you back. Thanks again,
It was
Doctor.
my honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Braverman.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
This is Let the Record Show. We're back for our final segment. This has been a very interesting show, Jesse. We've had Dr. Braverman on talking about brain health and the addiction crisis. We've had Colonel Tony Shaffer on talking about the Russia crisis. I want to raise with you, and I want to get your thoughts to conclude our show today. Adam Schiff, who led the charge against President Trump in the first impeachment hearing, was just censured by the Congress of the United States for his false and deceptive statements regarding that, for his leaking of confidential information. And I want to get your thoughts on that, because I think that Mr. Schiff did a tremendous disservice to this country when he did that. And I say that as a House Democrat, and he's a Democrat. And now he wants to go to the United States Senate based on this record. What do you say?
Number one, Your Honor, Adam Schiff lied as the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, or the House Intelligence Committee. He wasted tens of millions of dollars as the chairman of the Intelligence Committee. He divided this country by parroting lies that he knew, information that he knew that was wrong, false, and lies to divide this country. And he knew he was using his information for partisanship and for election interference. He exploited this position, and honestly, he hurt the American people, and he hurt many of our American institutions. I believe that censure was the least he should have gotten, and I believe that far worse should be it. Because what is even worse of this individual, this callous individual that cares more about his own self-promotion and gaining more power, is his arrogance in the way he conducted himself during this censure debate, and the fact that he used it as a tool to fundraise. This is a corrupt individual who is trying to bring his corrupt nature to all facets of our government, and he needs to be stopped. I believe censure was the least that the House of Representatives can do. The rules prevent anything further from going at it, but at least it also demonstrates the difference between House Republicans and House Democrats. House Democrats have utilized the tools of the House of Representatives by impeaching, using impeachment to achieve political purposes under Donald Trump and others. At least in the House of Representatives under McCarthy's leadership, they used the tool of censure to ensure that the right actions were taken on this individual.
Well, what I find amazing is that he still walks around like he did something valuable and important for this country, and he knew he was lying at the time. He certainly knows he was lying and misrepresenting the facts after all the reports, everything that came out. If you read the Durham report, and if you don't come out to the conclusion that this country was deliberately misled by these opportunists like this gentleman from California, this Adam Schiff character, if you don't get a sense of outrage about that, there's something wrong. It's absolutely reprehensible what these people did and put this country through. And not only did they put the President of the United States through it, they diverted his attention, his energy, and his focus, and yet he was still an accomplished president. But they made us weaker in the eyes of the world and only emboldened our enemies. There was a real price to be paid for these false narratives proposed. And to see, Jesse, and I say again as a House Democrat, to see that the Democrats on the floor of the United States House of Representatives applauding and cheering Adam Schiff on the censorship is absolutely incredible. What say you?
You're absolutely right. I mean, but this is the way they conduct themselves. They fundraise off of corruption. They fundraise off of dividing this country. They use the institutions of our government that have been laid down by our forefathers for the purposes of achieving more power, more influence, and profiting for themselves. It's wrong. I'm glad that the House of Representatives censured this individual. I'm disappointed it was along party lines. But I respect everyone's vote. But you do know that if it was in the reverse, if it was a Republican sitting there, and it was in 2021, I believe it was the last time that the House of Representatives censured one of its own. Those are the tools we need to do to make sure that we root out, in part, corruption and the accumulation of power and influence for personal profitable gain.
Absolutely. My final point on this is Congressman Peter King, who is chairman of Homeland Security on the Intelligence Committee, has stated time and time again on Katz and Cosby and on this show as follows, that Schiff would sit in the briefings and the private testimony downstairs. And then he would come up and he totally misrepresented what was said. He was coming to conclusions and making allegations of fact that just weren't there based on anything that was heard downstairs. And he did it shamelessly, and he still perpetuates that shame. So with that, I have to say we have to sign off today, Jesse. This has been Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. I hope you've enjoyed today's show, and we look forward to being with you again next week on Let the Record Show. Thank you for listening.
Everyone say a prayer for America as we approach July 4th, Independence Week.
Amen to that. The greatest country in the world, the greatest country it's ever been. Thank you, Jesse.